Space, the final frontier. Join us for a bold conversation. Our prime directive? To recap our favorite Star Trek shows, both new and old. To engage in debate about all things Trek. Prepare to energize with phasers set to stun.
Hello and welcome back to Phasers Set to Stun. In this ongoing series from a Film by podcast, we focus on every quadrant of the expanding universe of Trek by covering television, animation, movies, directors, and more. Plotting the course, as always, is your core Trek crew. I am Scott Hoffman.
I'm David Burns.
And I'm Wayne Whited.
And in this episode, like we have been for the past couple of episodes, we're continuing with Starter Treks, a spoiler-free curated episode list of the top 10 episodes you can watch as a great way to get into each series. And just to be clear, we're talking about the 10 episodes to watch in order of appearance, not really in order of preference. Crew, let's talk about Deep Space Nine Season 5, continuing the marathon of this one. Dave, is it safe to say it's getting tougher to choose our top 10? There's a lot of continuity in this, right?
It's getting harder and harder. I was even looking ahead at season 6 and like, oh my god, how are we going to do this? Yeah.
We'll figure it out, but much to cover.
We were talking about, when we first started the series, the later you get into this, the episodes get really good and it becomes that story arc. That just goes on throughout the seasons. And I mean, these last few seasons of Deep Space Nine are just insane.
Yeah. So it's tough to skip around. It's also tough to avoid spoilers. So we're gonna check each other and make sure that. But might make some descriptions a little bit shorter than others. So if it's super short, just know it's super important and a lot of big reveals.
We will do our best. We promise.
All right. Well, Wayne, why don't you start us off with Apocalypse Rising?
Yes, and this is written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewlett Wolfe, directed by James L. Conway. Sisko assembles a covert away team after Odo's fragmented memories indicate that Klingon Chancellor Gowron may be a changeling, threatening to destabilize the entire quadrant. Disguised as Klingon warriors, Sisko, O'Brien, and Bashir, along with Odo, travel deep into enemy territory to infiltrate a ceremony where they hope to expose the imposter. As suspicions mount and their cover begins to slip, the team struggles to activate a device that will force any shapeshifter present to reveal its true form. But the answer to who the imposter is shocks even Sisko and his team. After we spent the entire fourth season dealing with the Klingon War that Paramount insisted that they do, this episode finally brings things back on track and with bringing the Dominion back into play and ending the Klingon War. But they didn't just drop the Klingons and move on. So they had to connect the two stories. So I can't reveal what happens in here, and it's really hard to get around it. But you just go watch this and find out yourself. It's another change here that we really didn't mention in our top 10 season 4 podcast is that you really need to know this. Kira's pregnant. We didn't even bring that up last season. How did this happen, you might ask? Well, it's not actually her baby. It's the O'Briens. Keiko announced that she was pregnant last season in the episode Ascension, but then in the episode Body Parts, there was an accident on one of the runabouts, and Keiko is injured. So Bashir was forced to transfer the baby to Major Kira to complete the pregnancy. This was written because Nana Visitor was pregnant, and who, by the way, the father happened to be Alexander Siddig. They just didn't want to do another situation where they had to hide her behind tables or come up with excuses to get her out of the storyline, like they had to do with The Next Generation when Gates McFadden got pregnant. So this was their solution. I like the episode. It's a great season opener. A lot of nice, neat twists and surprises. It's a good start for what is going to be a very powerful and action-filled season.
Dave, who do you think is having the most fun on that Klingon ship? Actor and character.
Wow, that's a tough call. I mean, you can't say Worf. That's a cop out. I'm gonna probably have to say, I think Renee for Odo. Even though he was struggling a little bit at first, but when he comes through, he really comes through. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, interesting at that moment because Odo doesn't have a shape-shifting ability anymore.
Exactly.
So to see him kind of like stuck and frustrated, and he's like, "Great, this is the role I was born to play, and I can't."
Yeah.
Also interesting to see that call back to Undiscovered Country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
The statue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also Renee and the Klingon makeup. Right?
Oh, that's right. He was in that film. I forget about that.
He was.
Yeah. But I was forgetting, was he pretending to be a Klingon there, or was he an actual Klingon?
No, he was pretending.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, most of his scenes got cut, and that's why I forgot about it.
Yeah. I feel like Cisco was
He was pretty cool.
chewing the scenery. Like he was having a great time. And I know that comes up a little bit later when he gets into there's another episode where he really gets into Klingon culture. But yeah, he was eating it up. I think Worf was probably thinking like, turn it down just a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's funny. It's interesting that the line that Kira gives to Bashir, "This is still your fault," about her pregnancy. I think that's funny because it really was, the actor's baby. So it's funny that they actually wrote that in there like that. Odo's obsession with Bubbles, which I think was absolutely hysterical.
Yeah.
But then I tell you, man, I know we've mentioned this so many times. We mentioned in The Next Generation, we mentioned it, I think, a season ago. Gowron, I tell you, man, he just stares through your soul. He does.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't help it. Every time I see him on screen, I'm like, man.
You kind of tilt to the left a little bit.
You do. Like, oh,
looking
boy.
at me? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I think wasn't Dax supposed to be a Klingon, but she was allergic. The actress was allergic. Terry Farrell was allergic to the makeup.
I think that's right.
So she couldn't be a Klingon. So they had to change roles for her.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think they discovered that back when they were doing the pilot because she was supposed to have prosthetics and it caused problems. That's why they changed it.
Because I mean, she's the Klingon expert besides Worf, of course. But I mean, it would have made sense if she was with them. So, but hey, it still worked out.
Something that I think confused me and I would think would kind of irritate Worf is that he wasn't recognized. Like, there's the scene where somebody says, like, I think it's Martok, says, "You have a very familiar face," in reference to O'Brien. And Worf is probably like, anything? Like, really? I'm in this big hall and nobody recognizes me. Wow, I feel really left out.
And Cisco got recognized.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. At that point, the reveal happens. If I was Worf, I would just toss down a bat'leth and I would be like, nobody in this hall recognize me as a bit. Fine. Forget you guys.
Forget you. That's right.
Anyway, speaking of Worf, we've got another one. Next one is mine. Looking for Parmak in All the Wrong Places. Written by Ronald D. Moore and directed by Garrick himself, Andrew Robinson. In an episode we didn't cover, Quark accidentally killed a Klingon, which resulted in him becoming the head of a Klingon house, being married to a Klingon named Grilka, and divorced all in the same episode. I forget which season it was, but it's a doozy. That's an important part of this episode when Grilka arrives and is instantly crushed on by Worf, resulting in one of the oddest love triangles I've ever seen on Deep Space Nine. Worf wants Grilka, Dax wants Worf, who is totally dim to her flirtations, and Quark just wants some Grilka sexy time. So Dax has to coach these dimwits on the matter of Klingon romance, while Quark tries to help settle Grilka's finances without getting killed. Meanwhile, in a storyline that feels a little too creepy and odd to talk about, O'Brien and Kira start getting too familiar with each other while she's carrying Keiko's baby. It's a little dizzying the way they've described it, although I feel like it's a totally accurate description. But worth watching for the Worf-Quark-Dax dynamic. It feels like this is Cyrano de Bergerac with stunt doubles and fight coordinators.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. It was an interesting dynamic. It's a standout Quark episode, I think, because I don't know of any other Ferengi that could probably navigate this whole relationship that he has to do with Grilka and everybody surrounding Grilka. But I just can't believe how just utterly dim Worf is to all these flirtations. And if you've got Dax flirting with you, I'm sorry. I'm going to be like, okay. Yes, please.
There's a continuity problem in this episode for all of Star Trek for Worf. Because he says, I've never courted a Klingon woman. You liar, you have too.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a bunch of lies.
Uh-huh. And if she shows up, she's going to be like, you forgot about me too, huh? Yeah. All right. That's why they don't recognize you in the Klingon Hall, jerk.
In his defense, if it was, he didn't really court Kalar. She kind of went after him. So
but
maybe
he still was in a relationship with her.
Well, yeah, he was. You're right.
So I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess there is it's a fine line right there. Wayne.
Yeah, it is
line.
very fine.
But still, when he said that, I was like, wait, what? What did you say? But the biggest question in this episode is Quark brings up war. What is it good for? If you ask me, absolutely nothing.
He should have taken his own advice later in this season, but we won't talk about that.
We won't talk about that. No.
Well, this is definitely a breather episode. It's very lighthearted before all the war stories begins. But I know everybody finds the B story creepy, but I actually think that's the highlight of this episode. This isn't one of my top favorite episodes of the season, but I think the storyline with Kira and O'Brien it's actually the highlight. It's very real for those characters, the way they're acting. I mean, if you really think about it, O'Brien, he's worried about the baby, and he's asking, Kira to take it easy, which she's offended by. That makes sense. You got Shakar's there, and he's acting very awkward because he's not sure how to deal with Kira's pregnancy. It does bring a lot of depth to these characters, despite it is a little creepy because you can definitely tell there's some romantic tension between Kira and O'Brien. Right. It's not mentioned; it's just kind of hinted. But fortunately, that really doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, fortunately,
thank goodness.
Very fortunately,
yeah. I love the Klingon opera that Worf is listening to. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And I find it funny, Worf, when he realizes that she is, well, he doesn't know who she is just yet, the Klingon female, and tells that it's friends to Quark. And she's like, she's a friend of the Ferengi? As you know, he doesn't like to call him Quark.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Absolutely love that.
I love the scene where Dax is trying to coach Quark through some relationships and some, sexy times there. That's just kind of like, oh, this is so awkward. And Worf has to just be fuming on the side. Like he's, yeah.
I mean, it was a fun episode, but man, there were some awkward scenes. It's like,
very true. Very true.
But it was fun.
Speaking of fun episodes, Dave, why don't you tell us about the next one?
First off, thank you for letting me have this one. This is such a treat for this season. It's a treat for all of Deep Space Nine, anybody who loves Star Trek. Yeah. So, Trials and Tribulations, written by Ronald D. Moore and Renee Echeverria, directed by Jonathan West. The Department of Temporal Investigation arrive on the station. They are there to get the truth from Benjamin Sisko about an incident on the Defiant. Benjamin explains that they received an orb from Bajor that they were taking back to the station when something goes wrong, and the crew of the Defiant found themselves transported back in time. It is learned that a Klingon spy, Darwin, had caused the orb to send them back to the time of the USS Enterprise under the command of Captain James T. Kirk. They blend in with the crew right in the midst of one of the most memorable episodes of the original show to stop Darwin from changing the events of history. I believe they stated this was the most expensive episode of Star Trek to that date ever created.
It looks like it.
Because they had to recreate the sets to make it look like the original Enterprise from the 60s.
You had to build new models. All those models. They didn't have the originals.
Yep. Yeah. And then on top of that, which I loved, and the director went out of his way to make sure he was using the style of lenses from the 60s to give it that look. Lighting techniques. He used a stock of film from the 60s to give it that grain, which I think is why it looks so good, that it matches, it blends so well. Some of those scenes, man, I tell you, you almost can't tell.
No. Yeah.
Because they did such a fantastic job of blending them together. It's a very impressive episode. For anyone who's never seen this episode before, you are in for an amazing treat. You really are. And I remember when they were advertising this, I was like, whoa, how the hell are they going to pull this one off? And man, did they pull this off brilliantly, I might add.
Well, specifically the fight scene. Yeah. I think to be able to cut that together with so much quick action going on.
Yep.
Really, really well written. I love the integration of the time cops.
Yep. And they were funny. That's what I liked about it. They were kind of humorous.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I never expected to get so much, or to see so much being made out of the tribbles. Like from the original series, it seems like that would have been like, it's one and done. But it's been used to great effect, I think, with a lot of things that we've seen. We talked about the short trek?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this one was hilarious. It's interesting that nobody gives Odo a second look.
Nobody.
Yeah. They're just like, oh yeah, that's a guy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
You've never seen a changeling before, but it's a guy.
The discussion of them looking to Worf of like what happened to the Klingons. They're like, Worf, what happened? I love that conversation that went on. But I love the fact too that Worf was like petrified of the tribbles.
Yes.
Or he was angry at the tribbles because of what happens at the end of that episode. So good.
You know, this was, if anyone doesn't know, this is the 30th anniversary episode because it was, 1996. This one and Voyager were all doing a big 30th anniversary special. I think this is they're both fantastic, but this is definitely the highlight of the two. It took a while for them to decide they were going to do this episode. Their original idea was to actually use the episode Charlie X because the original actor's still alive, but then they thought, well, let's do an episode based on a piece of the action where they go back to the planet and find out that the civilization's now imitating Kirk and Spock and the Enterprise, and but then Forrest Gump came out, and that was the thing that really made this episode happen. They saw that film, they decided, hey, we can do that, and that's why they chose the Tribbles, which is, I mean, it had to be that episode. That's probably one of the most popular episodes of the original series. It's definitely one of the most remembered. It's amazing what they did. It's mind blowing what they did to recreate everything. I mean, everything had to be done from scratch, and they got back one of the original actors, which I think is actually the icing on the cake here. Charlie Brill. He was the perfect person to return for this. Just makes this episode even more fantastic.
When they donned the original uniforms, that right there is like, oh man, this is going to be a lot of fun. It really is. And of course, Dax looking incredibly attractive in her uniform. I'm not going to argue that. But man, there's just so many good things about this I just love watching this episode. I've seen this episode quite a few times because I love to go back to revisit this one because it's just so much fun. And it's just the way they put it together and edited was just brilliant. Especially when Kirk had everybody lined up wanting to know what happened, and they blended the actors in beautifully with that.
Yes.
And then another thing, if you know some of the behind the scenes when they filmed the original Tribble episode, when all the Tribbles come out and pile up on Kirk, they had production assistants back there throwing Tribbles out to hit him. How cool was it that they actually had them in this episode doing that, throwing the Tribbles as they're going through them. Their shoulders. They're tossing them, and they're coming out and hitting him. It was perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfect. That one that hit him in the top of the head, they had Jadzia through it. It just showed, it's amazing how they integrated everything so perfect into that episode, so believable.
Yep.
Well, Wayne, the next one is yours. Tell us about Rapture.
Rapture was written by L.J. Strom. The teleplay was by Hans Bremler, directed by Jonathan West. After discovering an ancient Bajoran artifact, Captain Sisko experiences powerful visions that deepen his connection to the prophets and reveal long-lost Bajoran history. As the visions intensify, he becomes obsessed with deciphering their meaning, even as the strain begins to threaten his health. Sisko ultimately warns Bajor against joining the Federation, believing that doing so would lead to a catastrophe. But the visions begin to take a physical and mental toll on Benjamin Sisko, and Jake is forced to make a decision that would end the visions but save his father's life. Now, I fought for this episode to be in here because this, in my opinion, this is a turning point. This is a serious turning point in the series. Well, first off, anyone who's watching this episode is going to notice one big change in the series, and that's the uniforms.
Of course,
because this is the episode where Deep Space Nine switches from wearing the new Starfleet uniforms that we see in Star Trek: First Contact, and it's quite a shock at first. But I got to say they look pretty good in with the cast, But this isn't. It's a turning point for the series, but it's more of a warning of what's to come. It's a very detailed, important episode. It deals with the show's religious mysticism, its politics, personal sacrifice for Sisko. It just forces every character to confront the implications of Sisko's spiritual authority with the Prophet, or as the Prophet, excuse me. Starfleet's worried about his mental instability, and Kai Wynn envies his connection to the Prophets, and Kira just has faith in him and accepts him. It's something that the series has been avoiding for the past 5 seasons, and it needed to be addressed because it's very important. Because it made me reevaluate the character of Benjamin Sisko and his mission on Bajor. Remember back in the pilot when he was first assigned to DS9, and Captain Picard told him that he was to do everything short of violating the Prime Directive, to get Bajor to join the Federation. Well, Sisko went and basically made himself a god to the Bajor. Yeah, which is probably the first thing that's listed in the Prime Directive Handbook. Not what to do. You shouldn't do this. Yeah, they probably teach that first day at Starfleet Academy. But right here in this episode, he's directly influencing the development of the planet Bajor. It may not be the most interesting episode of the season, but it's a really, really important character part and makes you consider and think about this. It's also a big turning point for Kai Wynn as well. You got to think of that. For the last 5 years, she's doubted that Sisko is the true emissary, and she's plotted against him. But now here, she's finally accepted it. She has to, that he's the emissary. But her character changes now. Now that she's accepted it, she's going to start to begin to resent him and become jealous from it.
Nurse Ratched has finally turned a corner.
Yep. Yeah.
Am I the only one that does not like Yates?
Oh, I like her. I guess so. I mean, I think she's a great addition to the cast. She doesn't overstay her welcome, but it's nice to see a romantic relationship that takes a long time to develop. It's not something we really see too much on Star Trek.
Just not a fan of that character. I'm sorry.
Well, what don't you like about her? I'm curious.
I don't know. She just gets on my nerves. There's just something about her that I just don't like.
Oh, are you jealous?
No.
She's taking Captain Sisko? Oh, no.
Not at all. Not at all. I don't know. It just feels like it's fake, the relationship. I know it's not, but it just feels weird and strange.
Well, Wayne, I'm glad you lobbied for it, because I think, thinking of people who are rewatching this series, this is, for those who know what happens at the end of the series, this is one where it's going to help to connect the dots a lot more. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll take us into the next one. All right, we're back, and the next one is mine. This is called The Begotten, written by Renee Echeverria and directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino. It's more baby drama in this episode, but this time it revolves around the Kira and O'Brien dynamic, as well as Odo. To sum up the former, Kira's in labor, and the clueless Miles O'Brien and Shakar can't keep from getting in the way of each other. Meanwhile, Quark sells something interesting to Odo. He has a trinket that seems to contain a dead changeling, which is odd in itself. But Odo buys it because he recognizes it's not dead, it's actually a baby changeling, and one that needs his help. He helps to nurse it back to health and sees it as another chance to get things right, correcting for all the mistakes that Dr. Mora made in raising Odo. However, Odo finds himself needing Dr. Mora's help as they work together to help coax this baby through the essential steps needed for a changeling to start thriving. It's a massively important episode for Odo, and one of Renee's best performances, in my opinion, in this role.
Without question.
He has so much emotional range in this one, which goes from, fascination to joy in some moments. It still strikes me as odd sometimes to see Odo smile. which is such a weird thing to say, but it is.
Just seeing the joy on his face in this episode is just priceless. It really fills you with warmth. It does. But I'm telling you that the scene where he is talking to it, and it's like a long piece where he's like, trying to, get something out of it, where it's reactions and stuff like that. Yeah. There's a piece of music that goes along with that. The score is absolutely beautiful as he is performing this. But I agree with you, Scott. This is probably Renee's best performance in the entire Deep Space Nine, and Odo's best scenes, because getting to see him almost to be like a father, because he knows he doesn't get he won't get an opportunity to do that, and getting to see him doing that here is just gold. And getting his reactions, again, we can't give anything away of what happens at the end of this episode, but wow, what a performance, and what a wonderful episode.
I want to shout out to James Sloyan, who plays Dr. Mora. On that note, Dave, specifically, because as a father of older kids, and you've been through, you get to the turn where it's like you're talking to your somebody who you've raised as an adult, and when they're kind of looking back on how to raise someone, on how they have been raised and things like that. It's interesting that to kind of relate to both those aspects of it. You can see Dr. Mora saying, like, I understand the things that I did, and I regret those things, knowing that he, should have made other decisions, obviously. But then, Odo, at that moment of trying to feel like as a new father, kind of like, my first responsibility is to get things right that went wrong with me.
Yep.
Right.
You're right. The highlight of this episode is definitely the Odo story, but in terms of the continuity of Deep Space Nine, you can't miss this because of the B storyline. This is the episode where Kira gives birth to Kira Yoshi O'Brien, which is what they named the baby. It's important for that. And good old Miles O'Brien, he got to be there for the birth. I'm so glad he was. Yeah. He didn't get to be there for when Molly was born. But another thing too, this is the final appearance of Dr. Mora, and it's also the final appearance of Shakar on the series. And I was surprised to see this, because we still got 2.5 years left to go on the show. But this is the third of the last appearance of Keiko. She only makes 2 more appearances in the series, and I guess the actress actually saw this coming because, for 2 things. One, now there's 2 kids to deal with, and she's pretty much, when she appears, it's going to be the kids, and the whole thing with, getting children to work, in Hollywood and have to work around schedules and times and schools and stuff makes it really, really difficult to do scenes. Plus, she knew that the war stories were coming, the really deep. We're going to be getting into the heart of the war that's coming, and she's going to be taking a sideline. So, I've always loved the character of Keiko ever since her first appearance back on The Next Generation. I'm glad that she came over with Colm Meaney to Deep Space Nine, and I'll be sad to see her go. But I'm glad that she was able to be on the series and appear what she did, because I think it's nice to have a married couple on Star Trek for a change.
Dave, next one's yours.
For the Uniform, written by Peter Allen Fields and David Weddle, directed by Victor Loewy. Benjamin is on a mission to rendezvous with a friend to find a way to capture the traitor Eddington. He will do whatever it takes to capture and bring him to justice. When his friend doesn't show, Benjamin and crew take the Defiant to track Eddington down, but they find themselves in trouble as they are tricked by the man they seek, and the Defiant is rendered almost useless. 18 months Benjamin has been doing his best to track the man down, and has failed at every turn, which now leads the Federation to make a drastic decision, but will that stop the commander of Deep Space Nine is yet to be seen. Some really great scenes in this one. One of the things that I love to see, that we're getting to see that Benjamin losing his temper. Like, out of control losing his temper, and it's starting to affect him a little bit in his command. Not much, but he just is gone over the edge of revenge, of going after Eddington, and you really see that. I mean, even some of the crew are like kind of taking a step back, to like, what? And you know what he does in this episode. And even Worf hesitates, like, do I really need to do that? And I mean, he basically crosses that line in this episode. Benjamin does. And it's hard to side with him, but when you think about it, with what Eddington was doing and everything that was going on, what else could have Sisko done in this situation, to be honest with you? He was put in a corner. Maybe he put himself in that corner, yeah, but he couldn't get out of it any other way. And the fact that not only him, but the Federation just could not get anything. No matter how close they got, he was always 3 steps ahead. And Benjamin didn't have a choice. And that's one of those decisions that you don't see in Star Trek much, of what he does. And, I hate to think about it, but I probably would have done the same thing, to be honest with you, because you have to do something drastic in order to catch that guy. And he had to pull it, so he did. But I thought this was an incredible episode, and I felt like it was a strong Benjamin episode. We've had a lot of great performances from him, from Avery Brooks, but this one, man, I tell you, it just, wow. Just seeing him on a whole new level, it's just a whole new experience.
Yeah, it's definitely a turn, not necessarily a 180, but it's definitely a turn in a specific direction for the Star Trek franchise through this series. And the storyline, like, you get glimpses of the kind of places they have to go, and that it's getting deeper than simply exploration or observation or connecting to new life. It's some of what happens with that in certain situations. I think it's a brave move to go where they had gone in the writing of this series and in the characters' decisions. It's definitely not one to miss, because you get a sense for the tone of where this is going.
Yep.
You also start to get the tone of what he has to kind of live with, the decisions they have to make.
We talked about quite a few times, actually, over the last few episodes for the previous seasons of the show, that it's going to get darker. This series is going to get darker and darker, and this episode proves that point, that it gets dark. You don't usually see that in Star Trek like this. I know we talked about like Best of Both Worlds, how you get that dreaded feeling deep down. It's the same thing that what Benjamin had to do in this episode, and there's more to come. And it's just it's kind of like a place that you never imagined the writers of Star Trek to go. And they are finally going that way because they wanted to. Deep Space Nine needed to separate itself from the rest of Star Trek, and in order to do that, you had to start pulling different cards than the rest of the other series have done, and this one did it.
Yeah. I'm with you with that. Sisko's actions in this episode are debatable. I guess it could be a good way to put it. Sure. It really shows that Sisko's, he's willing to step away from his Starfleet ethics, do whatever's necessary to win, even if it goes against everything that his uniform stands for. He's become obsessed, really, with capturing Eddington and do anything to get him. I don't want to spoil the episode, but it really shows the difference between what Sisko would do compared to, like, say, Picard. Because Picard would never have done this.
No.
Kirk maybe, but Picard never. And it kind of shows that really Sisko and Eddington are just different sides of the same coin. It's just the cause that they're fighting for is different.
One that can't be missed, for sure.
Let's not forget about the individual they used for communicating with engineering in this episode, Nog.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. yes.
I thought that was such a good use of his character, and I'm so glad that he's involved. They didn't just write him off to go to Starfleet. Say, "Oh, we're done with that character. We're not bringing him back." I'm so glad Nog is there and getting to experience some of this. I thought that was a great way to use his character.
Well, he does such a great job of holding his own.
Oh yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting, there's more of a militaristic feel in some of these episodes, and this is definitely one of them where you have people that are shouting to different. It's like watching people on a submarine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's one of the things that makes this. I know there's debates about taking Star Trek in this kind of a direction. I thought it was thrilling. I thought it was refreshing to see a different kind of direction, even if I don't always agree with the decisions that are made.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's a fascinating part of the series.
What's interesting, you talk about the submarine because the writers did an homage to Run Silent, Run Deep in this episode.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Well, Wayne, I think you've got a two-parter.
In Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light, written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe and Ira Stephen Bear. Part 1 is directed by Gabrielle Beaumont, and Part 2 is directed by Les Landau. When Garrick receives a mysterious Cardassian distress signal from the Gamma Quadrant, he and Worf travel through the wormhole and discover a Dominion prison holding Inabran Tain and several key Alpha Quadrant captives, including the real General Martok and one of their own back on Deep Space Nine. Their capture coincides with the Dominion's massive invasion plan, as a fleet prepares to enter the Alpha Quadrant under the guise of a peace mission. Worf endures brutal combat in the Jimadar arena, while Garrick attempts a desperate escape, even as he confronts Tain's final, complicated confession of paternal affection. Meanwhile, the Changeling, posing as a familiar face, sabotages DS9 and tries to destroy Bajor's son. I'll admit, I completely forgot about this story when we were recording the last podcast. I stated that Deep Space Nine didn't have any more two-parters, and I was wrong. Here it is.
lies.
And it's such an important two-parter in that it really changes the political climate for the series. The first episode excels at building tension for the story, from the discovery of the Dominion prison camp to the shocking reveal that one of the main characters has been replaced by the Changeling. Every twist that this story has really heightens that sense that the Alpha Quadrant is the brink of disaster, really. I have to point out Andrew Robinson's Garrick in this two-parter. His performance is phenomenal. With Garrick having to confront that Inabran Tain is still alive, which, if you remember in last season's finale, Broken Link, the founder had told him that everyone had been killed. So it comes as a shock that he was lied to and he's still alive. But on top of another shock reveal, which is a big spoiler, and I won't reveal it, I also want to point out how much of a trooper Andrew Robinson was, because when he filmed his scenes in that crawl space, not only does he suffer from claustrophobia, but he had a really, really bad flu that day that they filmed the scenes.
Oh my goodness! Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the second part, delivers the punch ending for the story, which it has some damn good fight scenes. Especially that scene with Worf fighting the Jimadar. I love that. It's really hard to talk about the second part because it's one spoiler after another. But just let me say this: the stakes are really high, and the ending is the number one major turning point to the series and sets the story for pretty much the remaining 2.5 years left to come.
This episode is crap hits the fan.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
That's exactly what this is. Interesting enough, I put in bold on here, edge of your seat tension, because that's exactly what this the ending of this was. It was on the edge of your seat because we don't get to see a lot of these endings like this. With a few of them we have, but this one is really starting to set what's going to happen, and we know what's going to happen at the end of this season. We're going to get to that here shortly, but the next two seasons are just hold tight because there's a lot to come. And it's going to get crazy. But my question is, when did Princess Leia's bow come to Star Trek?
Oh, I see that every time. It's hard not to see Bush there. Yeah,
you can't help it
every time, and I'm like, I don't know. I had that. Well, my sister, gotta give props to Laura, had that figure. It's such a cool design. I love that they don't try to adorn it with a lot of things to try to hide it. But yeah, it's hard not to see.
Yeah, it is. It is. But Wayne, you're right about the reveals, and we're not going to give one away because when they do reveal that, you're like, what?
Yeah.
No!
Yep.
You tricky people.
Yeah. And it makes you go back and think about it like, well,
it does.
What did he do, back in those episodes? When did it happen? What was going on?
Yep.
Exactly. Absolutely essential watching. Rewatchers, very important to get back into, and a reason that'll remind you why a lot of people love this series. Wayne, I got to commend you for doing a great job of dancing through spoilers there.
Yeah.
Because there's not much room to go. It could have been like, these are really good, you should watch them. All right, move on to the next one.
That took a couple times of rewriting to change some things.
Yeah.
And there's 2 points I do want to bring out also. During the episode, it's mentioned the Borg attack, this is the first reference to the events of Star Trek First Contact. Although there's a little bit of a continuity problem with that, because the star dates stated for this episode, which is 50564, actually take place before the star dates that are mentioned in First Contact, 50893, which doesn't make any sense. When the producers were asked about, they said just ignore it. Okay.
Okay.
And also, this episode is dedicated to Derek Garth. If you don't know who this is, he was a behind the scenes person that he died in a car accident while he was on his way to work on the series for this episode. So this episode is just dedicated to him.
Can I put in my usual Babylon 5 thing here?
Yeah, do it.
I still, as much as I love as Don't Hate Me Trek fans, I still feel Babylon 5's villains are creepier.
Yes, they are.
The Shadows.
I'll stand with that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were much more of a threat, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Than the Jem'Hadar. But that's my side note for Babylon 5. Let's get back to Star Trek. Sorry, buddy.
I'll keep that in mind when you guys walk me through Babylon 5.
Yes. But both shows were running at the same time. So that's why, the two shows about two different space stations, come on. You guys see the similarities and stuff between the two shows at times. And there's nothing wrong with and two great sci-fi shows running at once.
Let's see. At this time, we're now getting into the Dominion War, and Babylon 5 was getting into the Shadow War.
Correct.
Yeah, you couldn't help but compare the two.
No, not at all. You can't. But I like the Shadow War. That was just creepy.
It was.
I mean, Coke, Pepsi,
Oh, wait a minute. This is a good comparison for Wayne. Coke, Pepsi. Which one's Coke? Which one's Pepsi?
Ooh, interesting. Uh-oh. Remember
Pepsi's
what show you're
Babylon
on.
5. Pepsi's Babylon 5.
Oh, okay. We better move on. Let's move on.
Take that as you will. All right. I'll quickly get us into the next one. All right. Well, I'm going to take a turn with our next one. A little bit of a lighter fare, but still important for spoilery reasons.
Very important.
Dr. Bashir, I presume, is our next one. Written by Jimmy Diggs and Ronald D. Moore. Directed by David Livingston. This is a great episode for Voyager fans and fans of Robert Picardo, which I assume is everyone who's ever seen him in anything ever.
Yeah.
In this episode, he plays Dr. Louis Zimmerman, the inventor and life model for the emergency medical hologram that we know and love from Star Trek Voyager. He's here with an offer for Dr. Bashir that Julian has been chosen as the life model for the long-term medical hologram that's gearing up for launch. This puts Julian under a very uncomfortable microscope as he's examined and self-examined, thoroughly to capture every element for an accurate recreation. Dr. Bashir agrees on one condition, that his parents are left out of the investigation. Of course, Dr. Zimmerman ignores this, and he uncovers secrets that Dr. Bashir desperately wants to hide. On another note, we also see Dr. Zimmerman crush on Lita, who just wants Rom to finally admit that he has feelings for her. So the relationships on this station would benefit so much if people would just talk. I mean, it's a little bit like Three's Company.
Communication, please. It helps.
Rom, come on.
I know. Rom, what are you doing, buddy?
Yeah. Great performances here. A lot of depth about Dr. Bashir, and kind of an interesting look at a character who I think has changed quite a bit from early episodes like, Move Along Home. To what he is now. It's also an interesting look at how others perceive him. And Robert Picardo, standout performance here. Always entertaining.
I love him.
Always fascinating to see the aspects of his EMH character in Voyager compared to the person that kind of created that. It almost seems like there's parallels with Brent Spiner doing Dr. Soong and Data and Lore, right? Just different aspects of the same kind of. Love this episode.
One of my favorite scenes in this episode is Bashir's outpouring to O'Brien. It really reminds me of the scene. Remember when the two got drunk and they were talking about being friends and stuff? I think it was last season that we talked about that episode. Yeah. But it really reminded me of without the alcohol and getting drunk, but because it was a lot more serious this time. Just O'Brien trying to, calm Bashir down. Obviously, we have to be careful what we say here because we don't want to give away anything. Because there's another big reveal in this episode, for crying out loud. But the relationship between these two characters, again, just like Bashir has come a long way, these two characters' relationship has come such a long way too. And even playing darts together, just as simple as that, getting to see them being the friends, but everything they have been through. Remember the episode last season, where, O'Brien was telling Bashir not to do the things he was doing for the Jemadar, remember? On that planet.
Yep.
And they kind of got into a fight about it, an argument, but they were still such good friends that they were still able to put that behind them and continue on. And you see that here. And in that scene between the two of them, you really see how much they have developed with one another.
Yeah, there's a lot of mutual respect there. And interesting to see in a moment where one friend is really depending on the other, but putting it all on the table and saying, I don't know what to do about this, and I desperately need your help.
Another thing also I wanted to bring up, a little bit about continuity. You know how I love continuity. O'Brien's comments about Starfleet having not ever dealt with a genetically engineered officer in 100 years actually fits pretty good. The writers would never have known about this, back in 1997. But you can actually say that this is a reference to the trial of Una King on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which took place just a little bit over 100. I am?
Likely, yeah.
You are giving away some spoilers here.
For what? Oh.
I love the look of the realization, like, oh, crap.
Oh. I didn't realize that was a okay, well, yeah, that is a pretty big spoiler. You're right. All right. Phaser me, please.
All right.
I see where you're going with it, though. Yes, you can definitely see those connections and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love it when continuity works together. Everybody else, since you didn't hear that because the phaser just burnt right through me, go back and watch this episode, and then watch that Strange New Worlds episode. It was the second episode of the second season. You'll see the connection.
Yep. Let's also don't forget this is the first time we've heard about Nog's mother.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
When Rom's talking, we've never heard about her at all until now. So we get some of that in here. I think she gets mentioned again later on in another episode. I don't know if we're going to cover it or not. But the first time we get to hear that story.
And along those lines, shout out to Chase Masterson and Max Grodenchik for their roles in this. It's a B story. It's a relationship story.
Yep.
But an important one, I think, in their development. I love their relationship, and I think both their performances are standout in this one. I love their characters, and I'm glad to see where they start to go.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I think, Wayne, it's your turn. We're back. Wayne, you're up next with Blaze of Glory.
Written by Robert Hewitt Wolfe and Ira Stephen Bear, and directed by Kim Friedman. When Starfleet intercepts what appears to be a launch of Jemadar-equipped Maquis missiles aimed at Cardassia, Sisko reluctantly frees Michael Eddington from prison to help track them down. Eddington used the mission to manipulate Sisko into aiding a group of surviving Maquis refugees, revealing how thoroughly the Dominion has destroyed the movement. As they close in on the supposed missile base, it becomes clear that Eddington has tricked them to force Sisko into helping the survivors escape. Now, we've included this episode on the list because of its importance in the closure of the Maquis storyline, which has been going on since season 2. We get the return of Michael Eddington, played by Ken Marshall, one last time. The producers wanted to end the Maquis story now before they got into the heart of the Dominion War next season, because they didn't want too many loose threads left for the series. And because of this, it kind of tore the fandom in half. Some were satisfied with this ending. Some were left disappointed with the closure. But besides all that, Avery Brooks and Kenneth Marshall, they deliver really superb performances in this episode, in my opinion. The character of Eddington started off strong and very promising back at the beginning of season 3. But as time went on, a lot of people found him irritating, underused, and then Worf was brought on board, and the character kind of lost any sort of purpose that he had, and so they made him an enemy. Which is a great idea, but I don't think it worked out the way that they had hoped. But here in this episode is the best they've ever written for Eddington, and it really gives Marshall something to act with and show his character's strength. And which leads me, I'm going to rant now, okay? In my opinion, and I'm going to state that, the whole McKee idea and storyline was badly handled by the producers and writers. And I'm not just talking Deep Space Nine. I'm including Voyager in that statement. It's a fantastic idea, and it was well handled back during the second season in the two-parter McKee and the Next Generation's preemptive strike. But then Deep Space Nine introduced the Dominion, and we had that war, and then we had the Klingon War, and suddenly Deep Space Nine's trying to juggle way too many things, too many storylines. And the McKee story kind of fell off to the side. The writers just got bored with it because there were new wars to write about. And over on Voyager, it's even worse because you have this major conflict between Starfleet and the McKee and the pilot caretaker, which showed so much promise. So many things they could do with that. And by the second episode, it's just practically forgotten about, except for maybe like one time per season. I'll get more into that when we start talking about Voyager, and we're in for a long discussion there. But that's my opinion on the McKee. It's a great idea that they just went poo-poo with. What do you think?
So, and silence fell.
Awkward silence.
I think it's interesting as somebody who hasn't really gotten into Voyager as much, but I can see what you're saying with that. I can see why they had to go off in a different direction, but it seems like it's unmined territory that could be fodder for, I'm sure if there isn't novelization or comics out there that have pursued it, that there could be. I think it's an interesting thing to start to pursue, maybe from the McKee's point of view, because we don't get much of that. I do think it's interesting the glimpse that we do get into that, and the role of desperation that they kind of have in this one.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, let's round it out. Dave, you've got the next one, Call to Arms.
Written by Robert Hewitt Wolf and David Weddle, directed by Alan Crooker. The Jem'Hadar continues to infiltrate the Alpha Quadrant, preparing for war. As they watch more and more ships come through, Benjamin Sisko decides to place mines near the wormhole to stop the invasion, which forces a confrontation with the Dominion. Benjamin and crew prepare themselves for the inevitable, while at the same time watching allies of the Federation begin to leave. All of this leads up to a season-ending cliffhanger that Deep Space Nine hasn't seen, and will lead into the oncoming War of Wars that the Federation hasn't seen in years. All I've got to say for this is, it is one hell of a finale. Because this is probably the best finale I have seen for Star Trek, and that's all of the Next Generation up to this point. Incredible. This is exactly what I want from Star Trek that we've not seen. Tons of ships on screen, fighting, that dog fighting thing that you see. This is one thing that Star Trek has kind of missed out on that Star Wars nailed. And Babylon 5 nailed it too, by the way. I'm going to add that. But Star Trek finally nails it here with this finale. And man, I tell you, it may not say to be continued in this, but it is to be continued, because there is a lot on the horizon that's going to happen. So there's just so much in this stuff that I would love to talk about, but I really can't, because it's going to give away too much. Yeah. One of the things that I absolutely loved was the fact that Benjamin left his baseball just for the mere fact. It didn't come out to be said, and I can't say who found the ball, but it's almost like, let's play ball. It's basically what Benjamin was saying right there.
It was a message.
It was a message. Yep. And I loved that.
Interesting you bring up Star Wars, because I feel like this is almost like The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, it is. In a way.
DS9. In terms of the story arc, it definitely feels like that kind of a feel. It's almost impossible to talk about anything in this episode without spoiling.
Right.
But absolutely critical. Aside from the fact that it's the last one of the season, so I feel like we typically cite those as ones you have to watch, but it's done so well that I think it's absolutely essential watching it. And I would say it's something that a Star Trek fan should look at when they're looking for what are some reasons that I should care about watching Deep Space Nine. This is one that proves it.
Yeah. And I think, doesn't this start the 7-episode arc?
Yes, it does.
Oh, yeah. We'll just pick the first 6 episodes of the next,
there we go.
and just say, look, here are the things that happen.
Yep.
This isn't just the season finale. This is also very important in one aspect, and we're saying goodbye to one of the most important elements of Star Trek up to this point: physical starship models. It's CGI all the way from now on. This is the last episode they actually used models.
Yeah, I mean, it was time for them to move on to that. It's same. I love models, but I get it.
It was there at that point where they can use them now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they start using it to great effect.
Yeah. Some great scenes there between Rom and Lita, obviously. And, the use of Benjamin in a certain situation. But, yeah, so much happens in this episode that it's crazy. And it just, so much goes on inside the station, outside the station. It's amazing they were able to fit this in that, 45-minute time frame? It's crazy.
Well, let's go to the other side of the coin. We've mentioned a lot of great ones. Let's do a round robin, quick round of dishonorable mention. The episodes that we feel we can skip because they're just not quite up to par with the rest of them. Wayne, why don't you start with your pick?
Well, there were a few mediocre episodes this season, but the only one that I could say that I really didn't like was Let He Who Is Without Sin, the Ryza episode where Worf and Jadzia goes to Ryza, thinking it'll help with their relationship, and Julian and Lita and Quark go with them, and Worf gets involved with an organization that's protesting the comforts and sexual freedoms that Ryza offers. I think the thing that I dislike the most is how they show Worf in this episode. He's so jealous and insecure because, he learns a former lover of Curzon Dax runs the planet, which played by Vanessa Williams. And so he joins this moralistic, anti-pleasure extremist group. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's not the Worf that we've been watching for like 10 years at this point. It's awkward, and it just really throws the chemistry off between Michael Dorn and Terry Farrell. It's what's even more frustrating is that there's some really good ideas in this episode, but they're written so wrong. It just makes the whole episode unwatchable. It's a pity.
Dave, I assume you agree.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. There was no doubt this was immediately going to my least favorite.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be our least favorite like 10 minutes into watching it, but I was like, well, I got to muscle through. Gotta get through that gag reflex, and then you can I mean, the absolute joyless Worf who wouldn't know happiness if it sat on his face, that goes from grumpy to weaponized killjoy. I'm surprised that the relationship between Dax and Worf continues with this episode.
Right.
It's just kind of like, buddy, what's wrong with you?
No kidding.
But getting back to a positive note, we always put the spotlight on one standout character. And this time it's Quark. Dave, why don't you tell some reasons why Quark stood out as such a spotlight character for this season?
Well, there was quite a few scenes that I really enjoyed him with. Obviously, I talked a little bit about there was a scene between Odo and Quark in the episode, where he had the little kid, I should say. But I actually chose a scene that we didn't even talk about, an episode we didn't talk about, The Ascent.
Yes.
I love that episode because it is probably the best episode between Quark and Odo. And it's a shame it didn't make it to our top 10 because we really couldn't, because there's just so many things going on, and it's going to get worse the next two seasons. But how much those two characters go through on this planet, that it's a frozen planet, that they have to get to the top of this mountain to, get a signal out while they both hate each other with a passion, but yet they find a way to get along with one another. And just Quark and himself, being himself. One thing I like about Quark is he always is true to his character, always. From the very first episode to the last episode, Quark is Quark. Even though he may like a little bit, tiny bit of friendship pull through, but he's still Quark, and he's going to do something about it. I love the way it ends with how they meant every word that they hated each other, almost in a way that they showed how much they love one another, if that makes sense. But it's true. That's the way that those two were reacted to each other through this entire episode. They had to help each other, obviously, to get out of it, but they still do not like one another at all. In a way, they still like each other.
I'll pile on that because I agree. I love that episode, and I think it's one of the things that shows, they have a mutual respect of a certain degree, although they despise each other.
Yeah.
Or they always feel like I'm right on the cusp of getting this person caught. But I can't imagine turning this person into something that I know they would never be. Quark has a lot of growth. Quark is a great representation of why the Ferengi are worth another look beyond the fur coats and the whips from the early Next Generation episodes. And I like what you said, Dave, about how he stays true to himself. He's not always the, best example that you want to follow, but you can see the genuine moments come through. And yeah, I think it's a great pick. Wayne, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. The Ascent is actually the strongest Quark episode this season, but I chose a specific scene from the season finale, Call to Arms. It's a scene where Quark and Rom are together, and Rom is working on the sabotage work with the mines. And he goes, he asks why Quark is staying. And, he says, well, I have to look out for my bar. And Rom says, and I'm staying because I have to look out for you. You're my brother. Whatever happens, we belong together. And Quark returns and says, well, like I said, you're an idiot. But then he kisses him on the back of the head. It's it's like an unspoken encouragement. Really shows how far this character's grown from that purely self-interested Ferengi barkeep from the earlier seasons. He shows that, he has that same feeling everybody has staying when Starfleet leaves the station. He's anxious because customers are leaving the bar, but he's accepting the chaos that's coming. And his decision to stay on the station under Dominion occupation shows that Quark's he's not all profit and greed, that there really is a hero that's kind of underlying all that. And I just love that little scene.
As always, listeners, thank you for joining us. And gentlemen, thank you both for being here on yet another, feels like a long way to go on Deep Space Nine, but it's well worth it. So I appreciate you both.
Yep.
It is, yes.
As always, thanks to our listeners for joining us. Hailing frequencies are always open for you to share your thoughts, comments, and questions. You can email us at afilmbypodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and other media platforms. Let us know what you thought of the episode, and you might get mentioned on an upcoming show. You can also find all the Phaser Set to Stun episodes online at afilmbypodcast.com. Wayne, I think you've got some extra content coming our way.
That's right, listeners. You should check out the latest articles on a Film by Podcast's website, where a new regular feature has begun, Phaser Set to Stun's book reviews. Currently, there's over 150 Star Trek novels in release, and I'm going back to the beginning and reading them for you, giving you the lowdown on which books to pick up and which ones should stay on the shelf. You can find them on our website at www.filmbypodcast.com and click on the Articles tab at the top of the page. I hope you check them out, and happy reading.
Wayne, I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, me too.
One of my favorite authors, growing up during the Peter David run on Incredible Hulk. I love what he had done with some of the Trek novels, but that's only just a taste of it. So I love that you're diving into that. Thanks for taking that deep dive. I'm looking forward to digging into that a bit. And if you're looking for more exclusive content and swag, send some Latinum our way through Patreon. See you next time for another episode of Phasers Set to Stun.